talk about how you overcome hesitation and make changes in your own life. Um, Monique started her own company and she wrote a book so she kind of overcame some of those things to start her own course. And Molly, you made the leap from agency to higher ed. You were at the University of Minnesota, and then you went to corporate. Plus, you launched your own life and well-being coach business. So both of you have been there and done that, and you're both in the communication field. So I thought that you can really share kind of perspective that we all, as the members of this conversation, share. This is going to be an interactive conversation. So if you want to jump in at any time, you can raise your hand. You can put a message in the chat. We want to make this really engaging. When I started the Career Coffee series, I really wanted to be a place where we could share and learn from each other and ask those questions maybe you don't want to ask your colleagues or your boss about your career. So this is considered a very safe space, if you want to use that word, but also think empowering space. So welcome, Monique and Molly. Monique, do you want to just jump in and share a little bit about yourself that I didn't already do? And then we'll go to Molly.
Sure. That was a good introduction, and thank you so much for that, Eva. First, I'm just excited to be here this morning to have this conversation alongside Molly. Probably just a little bit more about myself. I am a wife of 22 years. I'm married to a first responder. He's an arson investigator, also of 22 years on the Omaha Fire Department. I have 3 children. I consider all of that my real first full-time job. I have an oldest son who is in the reserves in the military. He's doing cybersecurity. I have a pre-med 18-year-old. We just moved to campus in August, and a sophomore in high school. So that's just a little bit more about me, just outside of the career accomplishments and aspirations.
Molly, right to you now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I have been joking that I'm in my independent free spirit phase of life. So single, no kids right now. Finally at that, I'm sure you all remember this, that point in your career where you get to the stable point and you're like, okay, now I can either get comfortable and stay where I am for a little bit, or I can go launch a business or completely do something different. So I'm excited to share my journey and see what questions it sparks for all of you, and hope that you'll join us in this conversation.
And to jump into what Molly just said, when I chatted with her last week, she was driving with her best friend to La Crosse, Wisconsin, singing the entire Taylor Swift album. So that's kind of a little bit more about Molly.
I'm a Swiftie. It is true.
So we've got a list of questions we're going to start with. But again, if you have other questions you want to jump in or respond to something, or even share your own experiences, please do. We want this to be interactive. But I started up front talking about Monique's new book that's coming out, Chart Your Own Path. Tell us about the book and what motivated you to write it, and what got you over the hesitation that you had, or possibly had.
Yeah, so I got started along this journey of becoming an author in between December of last year and January of this year. And initially it was just about me being interested. I have 2 friends who had written and published books, and I had talked to each of them one-on-one about their journey, and they told me that they embarked upon the journey through a cohort. So it's like a classroom style. There's a lot of hand-holding. There's a lot of one-on-one working with a development editor to get all of your content out of you. And then I'm now in revisionist phase. So between now and I got till December 31st to get everything all polished and shiny and ready to roll. And it'll be released in late March, early April. But really, truly, I got centered around moving forward with the project after I spent a year working with a life coach. And I decided to embark upon that journey. I kind of got talked into that by a sorority sister. She lives in Atlanta. And we'd had a conversation one evening. We were both at a ball, and she told me about her own experience, and that I had to meet her life coach. And so I did a consultation session. And after my first consultation session, I was like, I have to work with her. But this was really, I feel like, my first time in life having an opportunity to be a student of myself. which was just such a revolutionary journey for me. I feel like we spend so much time figuring out how to do an excellent job in our careers. We're trying to make sure that we're firing on all cylinders at home, but we rarely get an opportunity in life to stop and pause and learn more about who we are and what's inside of us, what really our purpose is, what we're designed to be and do, and how we can serve others. So that's what I spent the year doing. And my coach helped me identify this unique problem-solving approach that I have to getting out of stuck places in life. Whether I'm in a situation, I need to decide whether to continue to move forward as is with a family member disagreement, or a friendship that seems to be one way, or even my career. And so she really kind of did that a little bit sneakily. She interviewed me about 3 or 4 times, and I didn't realize that she was having me tell these stories about these challenges that I'd been through in life. And she each time was really just identifying this framework that I tend to use to get on the other side of those challenges. And that's what the book is about. It's a 9-step framework that my coach helped me identify was my own. And it's me sharing that framework with others in case they want another tool in their toolbox to get their own selves out of feeling stuck.
Thank you. So Molly, how about you? What made you decide to choose coaching, to jump from agency life? What was your things that you overcame?
Well, first, Monique, you're speaking my language. I love to hear that you worked with a coach to get there too. And sounds very familiar that they worked with you in very sneaky ways. So my career has been very interesting. I started in agency world, and then I think very quickly just realized there wasn't something quite in alignment, and I felt a pull to try something different. Then I spent some time working at the U of M in more government-based communications. And then again, just felt like I wasn't quite in the right industry, or didn't have that passion for what I was communicating about or promoting. And that's ultimately what drove me to Target, because I just felt compelled to explore my creative energy, and I felt like retail was a good space to do that. So I've now ended up in employer brand strategy, which basically means I figure out what people think about Target as a place to work, and then influence that through marketing. And I feel like that's a great use of my skills, and allows me to get some of that creativity out. But I was actually exposed to a coach at Target, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago at this point. I was probably like 24, 25 years old. And she also worked in corporate America, but she was pursuing a coaching certification, and she wanted to test out some new skills on a client. And she had started as a mentor of mine and was like, do you want to be my guinea pig for some of these coaching tools? And I was like, heck yeah, sign me up. So I started meeting with her, and immediately was like, I didn't know this existed. I feel like this is something I need to explore and just be more curious about. And I've always been someone who my friends and family and people in my life look to for advice, or maybe I've just always asked them the right questions about themselves over time, but I knew there was something there. So I started pursuing, at least learning about a coaching certification and what it meant to be a life coach. But naturally, I think the fear and the imposter syndrome set in at the time, where I was like, you're 25, 26, like, who are you to be coaching people? No one's going to want to take you seriously. You're too young. You have to have life experience. And I put it off for years. I ignored that calling. And then finally COVID hit, and the school that I was pursuing started offering it virtually. And I was like, this is too easy now. I can't, if I keep putting it off, like, I am 1000% my own problem. So that was kind of what made me finally take the leap and go after it. And I have not looked back since. I've gotten 3 certifications. So I basically never stopped learning and kept going to school for it, so I can become an even stronger coach every day. And yeah, but it all started with being exposed to someone within Target. So I clearly ended up in the right place to make that move.
So I've always been curious as to what a career coach does for you. Could you just give us for the group here kind of a quick summary of
Yeah.
what you get from how the process works?
Yeah, for sure. I think I had this perception when I first was like, you're too young. Who are you to be coaching people? That a coach uses their own life experience and their own wisdom to give you advice or tell you how to solve your problems. And my favorite thing about coaching is actually that it has absolutely nothing to do with me. And it's all about how I can use the skills that I have learned to ask the right powerful questions to help people source the answers that are already within themselves. So a lot of it, a lot of it is about, and my personal approach is it always starts with helping people get really clear on what their personal values are and create an intention for their life. So getting really, really clear on what do you see for yourself long term, take all the barriers out of the way. How do you want to be in this world? And then the real work comes from identifying which areas of your life you feel satisfied in, where you're maybe hiding, or places that you're not so satisfied, and then working together where I can ask them questions to help them connect with their gut and their inner voice. Because a lot of times we have external factors or external opinions coming in, and we don't often give ourselves permission to take the space that you really need to listen to yourself. And I think that's kind of the beauty of coaching, is it strips everything else away and allows you to really just connect with what you already know inside of you, and then find ways to pull that out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know I've always thought about career coaching as to use one, and I never was really sure. I have hesitation for that. So that's interesting. So Monique, how has your experience as a PR vet shaped your approach to personal development? Like how has being in communication helped you with writing the book and also thinking about charting your own path?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I'm thinking about just really the evolution of our field. I'm also 22 years in. There's a lot of 22s going around today. I'm 22 years into PR and communication as my career field, and so much has evolved and changed. And I don't necessarily feel like there ever was a clear career path. I started off in federal government. I spent 12 years there. And we did have I guess it was maybe quasi career path where you could kind of see where you might end up if you stayed in federal service. In public affairs is what that was at the time. So we did have some level of career pathing happening there. But I think inherently after a while, I felt like there was more that I wanted to explore. So I knew that I wouldn't end up staying in the federal government. But I think really starting with the end in mind is what is helpful. And I cannot remember the book that I read. Molly, you might remember. I feel like it was like the 4-Minute Work Week. There's some book that I read that talked about this concept of dreamlining, which I think is scary for all of us, right? Because it takes us to the end. We have to think about the fact that we're mortal beings and our journey here is going to end at some juncture. And so you think all the way to the end and work backwards. Like, what do you want the end to be? What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to say about who you were, the energy that you brought to a space, to a room, how you made them feel? And then, starting from there. So for me, I know my own life expectancy is like 82. So if I work back from 82 to where I am now, which we're not going to talk about, but you probably can do the math in your head. But I can kind of figure out what do I want my milestone achievements to be, especially now that I've done some of the work in terms of being a student of my own self, and better understanding where my talents lie, better understanding what are the ways that I want to serve. And I think also that helps us identify the things that we should be saying yes to. I think our space gets really crowded with being on other people's agendas and what they want to have done. And we sometimes get kind of pulled away into directions that are not necessarily in alignment with that inner voice. And so my advice is just starting with the end in mind. Do I know what I want to be when I grow up right now? No, not necessarily. but I do understand more about where my talents are and what lights me up and fuels me and where I like to serve, and really the kind of person that I want to be remembered as when I'm not here.
Thank you. So there's a question that's on the chat right now from Daryl. I hope you don't mind I call you out. But summarizing it is like, how do you strike the balance between family, loved ones, and your career professional development while also being strategic and not about where you're going with that, and not getting overwhelmed? I know that I feel that way all the time. So Molly, what's your thoughts on that? And then we'll ask Monique to answer that as well.
Yeah, I put a little bit of this in the chat, but I'll expand on it. I said that I work with clients on this all the time. I think one of my favorite things to work with people on is we all kind of naturally prioritize work first because that's what pays our bills and what allows us to live our lives. But the reality is work is just a tool to get what we want. And ideally, it is also fulfilling and scratches some itch that you have for your life. But we all live these lives that have so many different aspects within them. And it's all about learning to prioritize our lives the same way that we prioritize projects or tasks on our to-do list at work. And I think that's kind of the secret to it. And then speaking to the overwhelm, there's a lot of different tools that life coaches use to help you get there. But with the overwhelm, it's pinpointing the source of that, which really, I think, gets to your gut. We tend to naturally want to avoid things that make us uncomfortable. And that means we're avoiding figuring out what those things are that are mainly contributing to our overwhelm. So I think it's all about like getting really clear on what is making you not feel 100% aligned. And then also going deeper to figure out how you ideally want to prioritize your own life.
I feel like that ties right into the hesitation. I hesitate about things that are scary to me and maybe things I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah.
So Monica, do you want to add? I mean, Monique, sorry. I knew I'd do it once.
We had that
Monique.
conversation earlier.
I will do that once. Okay, well, what are your thoughts on answering that question?
Repeat the question because now I'm a little off.
It was, how do you kind of not be overwhelmed, but still balance all the things that are going on in your life, and also being strategic and in going forward with professional development?
Yeah, I have a tendency to, and I'm probably a recovering people pleaser is what I would say. So I have learned how to definitively and confidently and unapologetically say no to things that are not aligned with the direction that I'm headed towards. And that took a lot, because you don't want to, as a people pleaser, you never want to disappoint anyone. You don't want people to be upset with you or not speaking to you or whatever all the things are. But I mean, at the end of the day, I had to learn that I'm the only one unhappy if I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to do all the things, right? So you have to figure out, I think, what are the things that you want and need to say yes to that are aligned with the path that you want to be on. That's the first thing. But the second thing, and Molly kind of touched on this a little bit, I think there are so many tools that unbeknownst to us, we don't leverage because we are so cluttered oftentimes. I know when I made the decision to transition out of a role that I had as the head of communications for the largest school district in our state, one of the primary reasons is, and I'll just be direct, I wanted my life back. It was a 24/7 role. It started at 5 o'clock in the morning every day, pretty much. There was always something going on in it, and I could never get away from it. It would be midnight before, sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning, I could kind of shut it all down. I'd be at the grocery store and people knew who I was because I'd be on TV, several times a month. And I'd get asked questions about work when all I wanted to do was just buy groceries, right? Why is school starting on a Wednesday instead of a Monday? It's like, it's 7 o'clock. I'm not at work. I really don't want to talk about that with the grocery store clerk that I don't know who you even are. So I think just, getting to a place where we make decisions about what path we want to be on, getting aligned with it. Then some of those other tools that I use that have helped to decrease the overwhelm, scheduling is huge. Like if I know that I have meetings like this meetings today, of course, just scheduling time on my calendar to be prepared, going over the questions. If it's not on my calendar, it's probably not going to happen. I'm huge on taking breaks throughout the day where I can just have quiet for 10 minutes. I listen to background noise that's recorded at those different gigahertz levels that really feel soothing to me as I'm writing. Just those kinds of like little intermittent plug-in hacks that you can put into your day, and they do work. They do help to decrease overwhelm. I think from a longitudinal standpoint, for me, I noticed the difference. Or even just having time affluence. Whereas I said before, I felt like I just wanted to get my life back. Being able to not have all those things driving me, and to say, this is the design I want for my life. I want to get up in the morning. I want to drop my son off. I want to go straight to the gym every day and just have an hour that before I have to give anything to anybody else, I've had my workout time. And now I'm ready to take on the day. Simple tweaks, but often we, again, get on a schedule or agenda that doesn't belong to us, and we don't feel like we have control, which I think causes that internal feeling of overwhelm.
I relate to that a lot too. And one thing that has helped me in times where you feel that sense of overwhelm and you're like, this is so bad that I can't do anything about it. Like, I just have to live and figure it out and hope it gets better. In those times, what has been really helpful is just finding a way to like bookend your day, in whatever way that looks like for you. But what worked personally for me is if I know that I'm about to have a really busy day, I don't have control of my schedule because it's just full of meetings with difficult partners. Maybe I'll set an intention to practice patience that day, so that every time I find myself getting caught in the swirl, I just reground in that word. And I feel like it can help kind of clear some of that clutter. And then at the end of the day, reflecting on what didn't go according to plan, what made you feel out of whack, what went well, and the most common, what are you grateful for? Just thinking through some of these things, to really ground in and be more aware of what those things are that are causing tension, so that the next day, maybe you try a new experiment and you find a way to be more mindful of whatever didn't go well the prior day.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'll just hop in real quick, Molly, because I know that I myself you can feel, you have this visceral feeling, right? When you're feeling overwhelmed or there's some tension, and sometimes I don't have the answer I just feel it. It's like, well, so I'd stop and journal, because I'm like, there's something here, right? Like there's something to this. Why did that? And why did, when that person did that, I'm so bothered? And so I'll get it out of my amygdala. I'll stop. I'll go into a space by myself and just write. I'll force myself to be honest with myself on paper about what I think it really is. Sometimes that stuff has to do with me. Like I may have some triggers. They may have come from a previous time I felt that way, or I felt dismissed or devalued or disrespected, or maybe I feel like somebody's competing with me. It's usually something that if you're honest with yourself on paper and no one else gets to see that paper, then I can look at it and go, oh, okay, that's where that twinge is coming from. So I can do better with that feeling next time, or not react to it and stay in that place of peace, even though that feeling is coming up.
Thank you. I've never tried the writing it down thing, but I think I might try that when it comes up next. So thank you for the idea. So in your book, you mentioned stories of people who overcame their fears. And this topic really is about kind of overcoming the hesitation. Could you share some of those inspiring stories for us? Just some examples of how people have overcome their fears or hesitation?
Yeah, I'll share one that is so powerful. So one of my friends is a COO at a large corporation, and he knew early on that I was looking for clients when I started Avant Solutions. And so one of the early consults I had was with a colleague of his who had worked alongside him. She headed up HR, again, for this multinational. And so we met, and she proceeded to tell me the story about how she, she's a tiny woman, like about 135 pounds probably. she's got a lot of personality, feisty, cute hair, short. But she proceeded to tell me how she had recently, within the last year, been made aware by her doctor that she had stage 4 breast cancer. And so she never smoked, never drank, again, worked out, did all the right things, but for whatever reason, they did not catch the cancer in her body. She had all of her scheduled mammograms. They caught it too late. So she was already at stage 4. But really what is so impactful about her story, I think, is really her bravery, her intention to not go into this pity party place or space, but to figure out how she could use what was happening to her and what she was learning to help other people. So she embarked upon this journey to create this guide. It's called How to Breast Cancer. And I can't remember the URL, but if you Google How to Breast Cancer, you'll find her. Her name is Amelia O'Reilly. But so she, out of her own pain, wanted to look for a way to educate other people and to serve other people, because she said every piece of information that she was coming across at the time was all really like in medical jargon, gobbledygook. It was hard to understand. Some of the doctors were difficult to understand. And she wanted to make this journey one that had other people that could go along that journey for people who were also experiencing what she was experiencing. And she said another thing is a lot of the cause work around breast cancer has to do with survivors, but there's not a whole lot that has to do with people who know that this is a terminal diagnosis for them, that there is no cure. What are all the tools that you're going to need to be able to psychologically overcome that? Because you don't know if you have, 1 year or 20 years. And so I think that is such a powerful story of overcoming fear. And again, it's so easy to get into a space of complaint versus gratitude. It's so easy to feel sorry for yourself, or to just, kind of find a corner to sit off in because you know that you have an expiration date. But we all have an expiration date, right? We just don't know when it is. And so I find her story so inspirational, just because she's so effervescent. The fact that she even wanted to take this on, knowing, there's days where she's out of commission for sometimes like a week after chemo. But then just, building her strength up enough to get back in there and continue to do this and go on tours and talks like the one we're doing today, and to find ways to raise money for people who need it, who are in that similar situation.
Thank you for sharing that. So Molly, on your side, you talk to lots of different clients that you coach, and you probably see a lot of fear and hesitation from them as well. What's some of the advice that you give to those people who want to take the next step but not sure how to do it?
Yeah, I think, Monique, you make a great point that we all have an expiration date. And I think that fear seeps into everything we do. You think about, we were just joking before you all got on that it's November 2nd. And I was saying that when the first of the month hits, you're like, ooh, a new month. This is fun. And then the second hits and you're like, oh my God, we're fully into this month. Like the year's over. It's basically 2024, which means it's like basically 2025. We're running out of time. Like we always have these thoughts, because life just happens and time flies so fast. And one thing that a lot of my clients, what's interesting is a lot of my clients do tend to come to me thinking they have a career challenge to solve. Like, I'm not happy in my job, I need a new one. Or how do I get to the next level? Or how do I get this promotion? Do I even want this promotion? And in looking at their holistic life, a lot of what I find is that their issue with their career actually has something to do with a different aspect of their life. Whether it's, I've had a client who thought they wanted a promotion and really they realized their gut was telling them that they wanted to invest more time in their faith and spirituality. Or maybe they're having issues in their marriage and aren't open in their communication, and simply solving that makes them feel better about their job. So a lot of times these feelings conflict, and you think your problem is one thing, but it's something else. And fear comes to the table when people are scared to confront what that thing really is. It's easier to say, oh, if I just get a new job, this will change. Or if I just lose the weight I gained over the holidays, I'll feel better about myself, when really it's a self-confidence issue. And I think people are afraid to confront their fears in a lot of ways. But when we do, it can be so powerful, because that's when your spark comes on and you can really feel in alignment with yourself and your purpose.
So what kind of tools do you offer or do you suggest for clients to help them figure out what is the issue, or tools to take the next steps?
So many. My approach is very creatively driven. So a lot of what I do, and especially working with clients who work in corporate careers or have very like logical, analytical tendencies, I use creative tools like visualizations, or having them draw or journal, or really get out of their head to externalize their problems and look at them almost through the lens of like that childlike wonder that we all used to have. And I think that often helps to simplify the problem and allow them to look at it in a different way. But one specific tool that I really like, and I use it all the time, arguably every day, is, it's not even a specific tool. It's more of like a concept, but and anyone can do this. So I hope that you all do this coming out of today, but if you just like draw a bridge on a piece of paper, it can just be a line with two sides. One side represents where you are today, and one side represents where you want to be in the future. This could be very high level, where you want to be 5, 10, 20 years from now, or it could be a really simple goal. And then you look at that space in the middle and ask yourself, where are aspects of this seemingly far off, out of reach future already showing up for me today? One example of this is, and I didn't even think about this until this morning, but one of my goals for next year is to engage in more speaking opportunities. And it feels like a very far-fetched thing. I'm like, where do I start? Who do I talk to? How do I start to find these speaking engagements? And then when I break that down and I ask myself, where are pieces of that future already showing up today? Here I am speaking to all of you. And it allows you to kind of close that gap that you think it's really far off, but actually it's a lot closer than you might realize. And there's always pieces of what we want showing up where we are today. So I would challenge you all to try that today, even if it's a small goal or maybe a larger goal, and just ask yourself, where are pieces of this already showing up today? Because it allows you to minimize the fear a little bit and inch yourself closer.
Oh, thank you very much. I will be drawing a bridge today, I'm sure. It probably will be to how do I get to Christmas, but that could be it. So Monique, you got this book that's got tons of coaching tools and insights. Same question to you. What are the ones that you feel have most significant help for people, or could be a good tool resource?
Yeah, for me, a lot of the tools that are designed in Chart Your Path are questionnaire oriented. The book has 9 steps, which I've already talked about, but essentially if we break those down into like 3 large steps, it starts with diagnosis, and Molly has mentioned that already. Like, what is the real thing, right? Like we're not necessarily always getting after the real thing. The very first 4 or 5 chapters of the book really lay the foundation for like, hey, how did we get stuck in the first place? Like who's responsible for this stuck? And a lot of it has to do with like our societal norms and expectations and conventions, right? Like there's already an established path for what in our society in America we're expected to do. And that is, you're expected to go to school, you're expected to get a high school diploma, you're expected to get a bachelor's degree. Then you're expected to get married and have 2 kids with a picket fence, 2.5 kids, right? 2.5, picket fence, and a dog. And then you're expected to have this amazing career, the right house, the right car, the right friends to come over and hang out with you and go on vacation, right? It's already like conventionally laid out. And a lot of our challenge comes in, to Molly's point, when we're on somebody else's agenda. That might not necessarily be the path that we want. That's the path society kind of has pushed on all of us as Americans for the last however 50 to 70 years. So there's all these societal pressures. So the book culminates in a tool that is the chart your path map and your faith statement. And that map you put together after you've gone through each of the exercises, and then you plot, your response. It's like a 1 to 2 sentence response in this 9 box that aligns with the 9 steps, so that you know exactly how you're going to move forward to get on the other side of stuck. And so that is the culmination tool, but it's the tool that really you can put on your billboard in front of yourself. I don't have that one in front of me right now. I'm looking right at my gratitude wall, though, because that's another tool that we can all use to focus on. Sometimes there's things that aren't going right, but we have a tendency to focus on those things instead of focusing on how many things are going right. And this is another exercise that my coach had me do, and I was just blown away by it. She had me in the cohort I was in think through the past year and to practice gratitude, like to write down everything good that we'd experienced in the past year. And so, after I spent time doing that, I had a list of like 40 things, and it was just amazing to look back at that. And that is so much more powerful than focusing on the 1 or 2 things that don't go right, or the 1 or 2 problem people in your world, because there's so much to be grateful for. And those positive nods, I think, help us keep moving forward along the continuum of the path that we really want to be on. There's so many questions in the chat, Eva, so I don't know if you want us to transition there or.
Well, actually, I have a question that just came to me hearing you both speak. So we're in the business of being strategic, making plans for other people, beginning of the next year. And the idea of being looking at gratitude for the last year is very intriguing. But is there I feel like making a plan for the next year and setting out goals becomes very rigid. How do you build flexibility into those goals in case things happen? Because life happens. I'm just curious about that. And that wasn't one of our questions, but that came to my mind. Either one of you.
I can go first, Molly.
Go ahead.
So I mentioned having my gratitude wall, but I also have my professional development plan for the year. So it's time to think about that now, right, for 2024. And that is essentially me taking a look at, where do I know that I have strengths? Where do I know that I have deficiencies? Or to Molly's point about getting to the other side of that bridge. And some of these are aspirational. I mean, I'm looking at it now, and I've not certainly fulfilled everything on here, but writing the book was one. And that was a stretch for me when I put it on the board. It's like, yeah, maybe that'll happen. Maybe it won't. But it's in front of me. I look at it every day. And I'm okay with the fact that these are my goals, and maybe they'll have one or two of them will have to carry over into the next year. But seeing them every day keeps them top of mind for me. Here's the other hack that my coach taught me, which I thought was so foo-foo when she told me to do this. I'm like, this is the cheesiest thing I've ever heard. But she had me to talk out what the end of next year looks like. So this was in 2022. And it's just like, you can be as bold as you want and how you want your year to end. And so I wrote all the things down. I talked them out and recorded them, and I listened to them. I don't listen every morning, but most mornings I listen. And if I could tell you how creepy that is, that those things come to fruition. And I'm not sure if it has to do with the fact that they're top of mind, but really some of them are not even within my control. And it is creepy. Like, so to speak out what you want and to get it into your psyche on a regular basis, there's something to that, because there just is. That's what I'll say.
Okay. I'm not sure I'll be speaking into a recorder and listening to it because I hate that. That's like one of my things. But the vision board, maybe there's some comments about a vision board here, and I think maybe that's what I need to jump into. But Molly, how is there flexibility in your goals, and how do you adjust? And do you get to the end of the year and say, oh, I didn't get any of these done? And, how do you deal with that hesitation too?
Yeah, I think this looks different for everybody. I'm personally just a very like hyper organized person. Um, so every year I have this activity that I do where I look at every aspect of my life. So I categorize them, whether it's like career, finances, self-care, relationships, fitness, like whatever those core categories are for you. And I throw them all on a piece of paper, usually typing it out because there's a lot of information that I end up putting out. And I write down an intention statement for each of them. And in more of like that manifesting language. So for example, if it's, I don't know, with spirituality or faith, maybe it's, I go to church every Sunday and feel really connected to my faith, or I take time to meditate for at least 5 minutes every day, whatever that looks like for you, and write an intention statement. And then write your reality. Maybe it's, I haven't been to church in 3 years, or I don't think I've ever meditated properly. That way you're acknowledging where you're at and you can compare it to the future. And then you can use that bridge activity, which is helpful to get from point A to point B. But what I like to do once I get all of that out on paper is take all of those different categories and prioritize them to decide what's most important to me. Because I might be shaming myself for not having gone to church for 3 years or never meditating and failing at that faith and spirituality bucket, when on my ranking of 10 different categories of my life, maybe that's number 10. Doesn't actually matter if I meditate or go to church because my focus is fitness or career or building wealth or whatever it may be. So I think it's all about like figuring out what really matters to you and then giving yourself permission to not do things. I've had like a lot of stuff going on at work. Personal life's kind of crazy. I'm going on a 3-week trip to India between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I'm like just booking flights, throwing money out the window. Like it just feels chaotic. And so I hit a point where I was like, I don't need to try and get 1 million clients right now. Like I don't even have time for them. So I gave myself permission to take a step back and reignite my coaching business in January and just let things happen the way they happen. The irony is that the second I gave myself that permission and I set them aside, within 1 week, I had 2 new clients without even trying. And I think a lot of times it's like, I'm a believer that the universe is doing whatever it's doing to us and we just are along for the ride. So it's like, once you just give yourself permission and like speak things into existence and stop putting so much pressure on yourself, the flexibility can naturally come from that. And as long as you can connect with yourself and what you know is important, it makes it a lot easier to do that.
This reminds me of a story of something I've done. I'm not proud of it, but I think it kind of puts us in perspective that we're all in the same place. So I was part of this women's group, and we went to this group in December, and we all stood up around the room and said one thing that we were going to do by the end of the next year. And I said, I'm going to build a website, because I figured that if I said it out loud in front of everybody else, that they would somehow hold me accountable for doing it. I haven't been back to that group in 3 years, and I don't have a website. So I guess it's being able to give yourself permission to not do it sometimes. But how do you keep yourself motivated to do it and not just be a cheat like me and just never go back? Any thoughts from either one of you?
I think that's where you have to really look at, where does it fit in your life priorities? Is it number 10? Is it number 2 and you're neglecting it? Because those two situations can be very different. If it's the last on your priority list and you're really investing in maybe 1 through 5 and you feel really good about those areas that you're trying to prioritize and focus on, giving yourself that permission feels a little better. However, if it's like number 1 or 2 on your list and you're completely neglecting it, then I think it's the challenge of what is blocking you, what is maybe triggering the fear, and working through some of those more emotional aspects, because there's something there that is preventing you from doing the things that you want to do. Maybe it's fear of, once I launch this website, that means I'm opening the door to receiving, and I don't know that I'm quite ready to receive. It could be a lot of different things, but I think examining that is a helpful place to start.
And I want to segue there because there is an anecdote that I share in the book that is from R&B artist India Ree, and she talks about how sometimes it is potentially the success that is scaring us or stopping us or keeping us in a place of fear. Because if you actually do achieve your goal, to Molly's point, well, then now what does that mean you have to deliver on? And sometimes we don't realize that is where the inertia is coming from, because we've done the buildup and now it's like, you're here, Molly, you're on the stage now, you're doing these speaking engagements. Can you deliver? Can you connect with the audience? And so that just build up to being so afraid of actually being successful, sometimes we don't realize is holding us back too.
That segues into a question that came up in here. Monique, what is the biggest challenge you experienced so far in writing your book? And then give a plug when the book's going to be available.
Oh, wow. I did put a pre-sales link there. That I think that, you know what, if you're going to write, that's the biggest challenge. There's so many other things that I have to deliver on in a day, that just putting your bottom in a seat and shutting the door and writing. And I'd write in sprints and spurts when I notice that my calendar's not crazy. Like today, this afternoon, I don't have any meetings on my calendar. I'll be in my office writing, but some days that doesn't happen because it's easy to get distracted or to go to the gym or do something else. And I feel the inertia from that. And to be completely honest, I think just the fear of it not necessarily being good enough is fear, because I mean, I'm a writer. I've been a writer since childhood, really. It was always the editor of the high school newspaper, college newspaper. I've ghostwrite for, executives at the top of multinationals. But when it's your project and it's your baby and you know that it's going to go out to the world and they're going to critique it, just getting over that fear and getting in there and doing it and just getting it done. That I have felt the internal inertia and that has some days stopped me from writing, like, oh, is this going to be good enough? Does this make sense? Will this connect? And so it's all an exercise in jumping off of a cliff, but whatever it is, that I think it is that we're really after is on the other side of that fear. So we have to learn how to face that.
So I've come close to the end of my list of questions. Does anyone have a question they want to put in chat or raise their hand and we can give you permission to speak? Then I know we maybe touched on this a little bit already, but Molly, what advice do you have for someone who's struggling to define their purpose or contribution in life? What's kind of your quick advice?
Yeah, I think on one hand, the simplest advice is get out of your own way, listen to your gut, try to connect with your intuition. We're naturally telling ourselves what we know to be true. And the biggest thing that we do is we get fearful. We try to push it down and focus on other things as a distraction. So giving yourself time and space to really listen to that, whether it's through meditation or other forms of self-care, just any way that you can give yourself space is one thing. And then I personally found value in working with various life coaches over time because it naturally gives you that space. And I think it helps be a catalyst to get you there faster. I have found clients within 3 to 6 sessions do more self-work than they had done in 10 years prior. So I think it can be a really good catalyst, and it's something that I've personally benefited from. It sounds like Monique has also greatly benefited from. So that is one piece of advice that I would give.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you. This changing landscape with the pandemic, which I've worked on the COVID campaign and seen in many ways, that one of the mantras with an agency I work with say, you can't build culture from behind a screen, which is so true. Just talk about how you're going forward with that, despite, maybe working remotely or hybrid. Just kind of curious about that.
I have found it's been challenging, and I work for a Fortune 50 company where culture has been a massive part of it. In-person culture has been a massive part of it over time. I was joking earlier, I used to go to Daryl's Zumba classes at Target, and part of that culture was like, even after work, I'm going to these workout classes and having community with people that I don't even work with day to day, but it's still part of Target's culture. And so I think carrying that into this world, people have different expectations for what role they want culture to play. I personally don't really have interest in doing like virtual happy hours with my team anymore. It feels a little bit superficial. So I've been finding more meaningful ways to connect with my team. And I think leaning into vulnerability has been the biggest key and unlock for continuing to build that culture. So whether it's doing like a developmental workshop with the team or doing a coffee chat weekly where we can open the floor for deeper conversation to really learn about each other and what motivates us, I think that just allows you to support humans in a different way. And that, I think, for me, is like the new wave of culture and how you can show up for the people around you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, Eva and Molly, we're a small but mighty team of 9 at Avant Solutions. And I am lucky enough to have one of my team members on this morning, Jana Ohm. And so I'm gonna pick on her this morning and have her answer that question for Avant Solutions, how we build culture from behind the screen. I've only met Jana one time in real life, but we've worked on many projects together. So Jana, if you want to hop in, that would be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm gonna totally brag on Monique and say that she's an incredible leader. She reaches out, she checks in, like culture can exist in a lot of ways, through the digital tools that we have. So I love it on a random morning when I get just a good morning emoji from her. Yeah, she did not pay me to say that. But she has done a really great job of curating really good personalities. And I think that the idea of hiring slowly and firing quickly applies here, because you can't do this kind of culture with just anyone. So it's a really important step is taking time to get to know your teammates and who you're bringing in and what you're giving them and how they vibe with the rest of the crew. I live in Central South Dakota, and I went independent in 2021, shortly while the pandemic was kind of still happening, but fading out, and a lot of different things were happening. And Zoom opened up a whole new world for me in my public relations practice, because I've been, since I've been a member of PRSA, I've been either a Minnesota chapter member or a Nebraska chapter member or both. And so my nearest outlet was 6 hours by car. So Zoom has created this incredible opportunity for me to interface with people everywhere. And so for you guys living in bigger cities where you can schedule a coffee date, I think creates a different vibe of how you build that culture, because you still have access to that. But I really embraced it because I don't always have access to that. So it's been cool being part of the Avant team, because we are spread out and we have intentionally embraced that distance of what we can bring to the table while still, getting to know each other in a meaningful way.
Thank you for sharing. I've seen your name on so many things, and now I can see your face, so it's nice.
Yeah, you too, Eva, same.
So I have a question here. This is for anybody in the conversation to add to, but are there any books you recommend that you've read? And we'll just put those in the chats if you want to. So Molly, any books you recommend?
Oh gosh, I feel like I have so many. I should send a follow-up for you to share with everyone after.
I will.
They're all escaping me right now, but I have so many that I've read that are very grounded in purpose and really connecting with yourself. One fun, very easy read is Everything is Figure Outable by Marie Forleo. I don't know if anyone has read that. It's like a quick, snappy, kind of fun read, but basically highlights that no matter what your problem is, there's always some way to figure it out. And it kind of just gives you like quick and easy tips to get at that a lot faster. And I find that it's like a good catalyst book to get people in that inspiration mode of like, okay, now let's go deeper with a bunch of other self-help type books or developmental books that go a lot deeper.
Any thoughts from you, Monique?
Yeah, I would probably say the one that comes top of mind first this morning is Steve Pressfield's The War of Art. And it is essentially all about what are the things, what is the stuff that blocks us from where we are to where we want to go in life. It starts off really tackling this idea that whenever we're going to get into a space that's outside of our comfort zone, particularly if it's entrepreneurial, if it's nonprofit service to others that might have like some controversial aspect in terms of what the nature of that topic is that we're trying to tackle, that we'll run into this inertia. And then ultimately the idea that the book is culminating in is this whole idea about going pro. Like, when are you going to stop being in amateur mode and actually like take this seriously, the thing that you're after? And so I think it's a good read. It can be a little gruff and direct, but I think it's spot on in terms of identifying the stuff, the clutter that stops us from going where we want to end up. It's Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art.
So what I'll do is I'll gather any ideas from Molly, and we'll send it out after the session as well. But there was a question about finding a life coach. Like, how do you, I mean, it seems like it's a personal fit. And the last kind of question here, how do you like know, or where do you start to find a life coach?
For me, I never thought, I mean, I never had the idea to even work with one. I had a sorority sister who had such a good experience and she was kind enough to share hers. But I do think that fit is huge. And I know that coaches also are vetting whether they want to take on a client if you're coachable. Some people aren't, right? Some people are just not in a position or space or mental place, I think, to be ready to take that on and do the work. But for me, I'd say if you have friends who have had good experiences with coaches, maybe starting there to ask. Sometimes people can be a little territorial around their coach and not want to share their goodies with others. Molly, I don't know. I guess I'm not sure where you go. I think I just got lucky to end up connected to Julie Landy at Live Your Vision.
Yeah, it sounds like you did get lucky. I think you make a great point, though, that when I meet with potential clients, like I'm vetting them just as much as they're vetting me to make sure that we're a good fit, because I want to be able to help people the best way that I can. And if I'm not a good fit, I'll recommend others. So if any of you are interested in a life coach, I put my contact info in there. I will never like intentionally try to sell people. I'm always happy to have a very open conversation. And I personally have a fairly large network of a variety of different coaches with different niches. So if you're interested, I'm always happy to have a conversation and help connect you to the right people as well.
So for me to ask now, my favorite to ask the whole group is, we're planning for the 2024 topics. And they all kind of go around the idea of helping you with career choices and career challenges. So if you have any ideas for upcoming topics, please email them to me and I'll put my email into the group for everyone to see. Because we want to make sure that we have good content for next year as well and discussions. But thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great discussion and I appreciate it. Thank you to our speakers, Monique Farmer and Molly Bush. Their contact information, connect with them on LinkedIn like I did, and you'll be inspired as well. So thank you so much and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.